Are you going to pay with old coins? The question came out of the mouth of Derek Matthews, manager of the luxury BMW dealership, with that tone of debauchery that only small people inside can use when they think they found someone inferior. David Goldstein, 58, was standing in the middle of Manhattan's most expensive showroom, surrounded by cars that cost more than entire houses, while three salesmen looked at him as if he were a walking joke. His worn shoes contrasted with the polished marble floor, but there was something in his eyes, a deep calm of someone who had seen the world burn and rise from the ashes. "Excuse me, sir, but are you sure you're in the right place?" Jessica, the blonde saleswoman in the impeccable suit, whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "The used car dealership is across the street." David had just asked about buying 12 armored BMW X7s, worth a total of $1.8 million. The answer? Laughter that echoed around the room as if he had just told the joke of the century. "Hey buddy," Derek approached with that fake smile of someone who thinks he's being generous. "I know you, people like you, like to bargain, but this isn't a flea market. These cars cost $150,000 each. It's real money, not coins in a jar." The comment drew laughter from the other employees. Sarah, the receptionist, even took a discreet photo with her cell phone, probably to post on Instagram with some hilarious caption about when someone gets lost in the wrong place. "Really," Jessica continued, clearly enjoying herself, "do you know what kind of clientele frequents this place? It's not exactly your profile." She made a point of emphasizing the last few words, looking David up and down with barely concealed contempt. Derek crossed his arms, assuming the posture of someone about to be taught a life lesson. "Listen here, old man. I'm going to be straight with you. This dealership caters for executives, businessmen, people who really have money. It's not a place for people who want to drive around and take selfies. Maybe you're looking for the subway?" Sarah suggested from reception, drawing more laughter. "The station is just around the corner. Much more suitable for people like you." David stood there, motionless, holding a worn leather briefcase. Inside were documents that would completely change the arrogance of those people. But it wasn't time yet. He had learned a long time ago that patience is the sharpest weapon against ignorance. An elegant couple entered the dealership at that moment, she with an Hermes bag, he with a Rolex watch shining on his wrist. Derek immediately changed his posture, turning into the most attentive salesman in the world. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. What a pleasure to see you again." Derek practically ran up to them, leaving David behind like forgotten furniture. Mrs. Thompson looked in David's direction and frowned. "Derek, dear, what kind of situation is this? Since when do you allow, well, you know, that kind of person in here?" "A thousand apologies, Mrs. Thompson," Derek whispered, but loud enough for David to hear. "We're already sorting out the situation. Sometimes these people get lost and end up in the wrong place." Jessica joined in, clearly enjoying the drama. "He came in here talking about buying 12 cars. 12. Like he's buying a bagel at the bakery. 12 BMW X7s? Mr. Thompson laughed. "That's almost $2 million. What does he think he is? An Arab sheik in disguise?" The laughter erupted again, louder and crueler this time. Sarah was already typing frantically on her cell phone, probably updating her social networks with more details of the comedy she was witnessing. "Do you serve cash customers?" David asked simply, as if he hadn't heard the disguised insults. "Cash." Derek almost choked with laughter. "Dude, you know that's almost $2 million, right? That's not bar mitzvah money you've been saving since you were a kid." The anti-Semitic joke made Mrs. Thompson cover her mouth to hide her laughter. Even Mr. Thompson, trying to maintain some composure, couldn't disguise his evil smile. "Derek, please," Jessica pretended to be outraged. "Don't be cruel. Maybe he made his money selling, I don't know, knickknacks on the street. Or maybe he owns a pawn shop," Sarah shouted from reception. "They always have a lot of cash, don't they? Old coins, gold rings, that sort of thing." The room erupted in laughter. Jessica was recording everything on her cell phone, muttering something about premium material for TikTok. Sarah had already posted the photo with the caption, "When someone confuses BMW with Jewish thrift store #dealership life #reality." But David didn't move. He didn't leave. He didn't shout. He just stood there, with that disturbing serenity of someone who carries secrets that could destroy entire worlds. Derek looked at Jessica, Jessica looked at Sarah, and everyone looked at David as if expecting him to magically disappear. But there he was, steady as a rock, holding his mysterious briefcase. "Sir," Derek tried one last time, now with a more threatening tone. "You're getting in the way of our real clients. I need to ask you to leave." David smiled for the first time. A smile that sent a strange shiver down Derek's spine, as if an icy shadow had passed through the room. "Real clients." David repeated slowly, savoring each word. "Interesting. Very interesting indeed." His fingers stroked the leather folder, and for an instant, something in his eyes flashed, not anger, not humiliation, but something much more dangerous. It was the calm of a predator that has just identified its prey. There, in that moment of absolute tension, while everyone was waiting for his humiliated reaction, David maintained that disturbing serenity of someone who is guarding a secret that is too powerful to be revealed before the time is right. His firm hands on his briefcase contrasted with the growing nervousness that was beginning to take hold of the salespeople. If this story of prejudice and underestimation has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple moment of humiliation became the catalyst for a turnaround that no one will ever forget. The humiliation was far from over. Derek had clearly decided that David would be the entertainment of the afternoon, and the crueler the better. "Sarah, call security," Derek instructed loud enough for David to hear every word. "I think we have a possible case of disturbance of order here." "I already called," Sarah replied from reception, typing frantically on her cell phone. "And I've already posted it on the company WhatsApp group. Everyone is laughing their heads off at the photos." David remained motionless, but his eyes moved slightly towards the security camera in the top right-hand corner of the showroom. An almost imperceptible movement, as if he were mentally cataloging every angle, every witness, every word spoken. Jessica approached with that venomous smile that only truly cruel people can produce. "You know what? I'm going to do you a favor. I've got a card here from a used car dealership. They have a 2010 Toyota Corolla that might be in your budget." "Toyota?" Mrs. Thompson laughed out loud. "Jessica, be more realistic. Maybe a 2005 Civic, tops." Derek was clearly having fun with the situation. "Actually, guys, I'm going to be generous today. Sir." He stopped, realizing that he didn't even know David's name. "What's your name again?" "David. David Goldstein." "Right, Mr. Goldstein. I'm going to make a special offer just for you." Derek crossed his arms, assuming the theatrical posture of someone about to make a big joke. "If you can prove that you have at least $50,000 in your account, just $50,000, a lot less than a BMW, I'll personally show you our used cars from the pre-owned inventory." The proposal got a laugh from everyone. $50,000 was less than a third of the value of a BMW X7, but for them, it was obviously an impossible amount for someone like David. "What if I have more than that?" David asked calmly. Derek almost choked with laughter. "More? Mr. Goldstein, if you have more than $100,000 in your account, I'll eat my Italian shoe in front of everyone here." "Derek." Jessica pretended to be scandalized. "Don't be cruel. Those shoes cost $3,000. "Exactly," Derek continued, clearly intoxicated by his own cruelty. $3,000, probably more than his annual income. David closed his eyes for a moment, and something strange happened. For a split second, his expression changed completely. It was no longer the humiliated man in the showroom, it was something much more dangerous. It was the expression of someone who had survived things that those spoiled people could never have imagined. His parents had arrived in the United States in 1965 with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a dream. His father, Samuel, had worked 16 hours a day in a small workshop in the Bronx, repairing watches and antique jewelry. His mother, Rachel, sewed until the wee hours to supplement the family income. David learned early on that dignity is not measured by the clothes you wear or the car you drive. He learned that some people confuse cruelty with superiority, and that patience is a virtue that needs to be cultivated, especially in the most difficult times. At 15, he was already working with his father in the workshop. By 25, he had transformed the small family business into a chain of stores specializing in antique restoration. By 35, he had diversified into real estate investments. By 45, His companies were worth millions. But life had taught him other lessons too. Lessons about loss, about injustice, about how cruel the world can be to those it considers different. His daughter Rebecca had died at the age of 16 in an accident caused by a drunk driver, the son of a wealthy family who had managed to escape prison through expensive lawyers and political connections. It was for Rebecca that he was there. The 12 BMW X7s weren't for ostentation, they were for the project he was building in her memory. A rehabilitation center for young addicts, equipped with the best armored ambulances for rescues in dangerous areas. Mr. Goldstein? Derek interrupted his thoughts. Are you still there? Or are you calculating if you can scrape together $50? David opened his eyes slowly. I was thinking about my daughter. Oh, how cute, Jessica said sarcastically. She must be proud of Daddy trying to buy cars she can't afford. She died 3 years ago, David said simply. The silence that followed was awkward. Even Mrs. Thompson looked uncomfortable. But Derek, intoxicated by his own malice, couldn't stop himself. I'm sorry for your loss. But that doesn't change the fact that you're in the wrong place. David nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe I really am in the wrong place. For a moment, Derek thought he had one. He thought he had finally broken that stubborn man's spirit. But I'm staying anyway, David continued, and there was something new in his voice now. Because my daughter taught me that giving up is never an option. Just then, the door to the showroom opened and in walked a tall man in an impeccable suit, with the unmistakable presence of someone who runs multi-million-dollar companies. It was Richard Stone, CEO of Stone Industries and one of the dealership's biggest customers. Derek immediately changed his posture, turning into the most attentive salesman in the world. Mr. Stone. What an honor to have you here. Richard Stone looked around, sensing the tension in the air. His eyes landed on David, who stood there with his leather briefcase, steady as a rock. Derek, Stone said slowly, I hope there's no trouble here. No problems, Mr. Stone, Derek lied quickly. Just sorting out a little situation. Stone looked directly at David. There was something familiar about that face, that dignified posture in the midst of adversity. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside David that his oppressors couldn't see, a quiet determination being fueled by the very injustice they were trying to impose. What those privileged people didn't know was that each act of contempt was signing its own sentence of defeat, written by the hand of a man who had learned that true strength grows precisely in silence. Richard Stone was not the kind of man to go unnoticed. At 52, he had built an empire from a small technology company in his parents' garage, and had developed an almost supernatural instinct for identifying exceptional people, especially those whom others underestimated. Derek, Stone said, keeping his eyes fixed on David, introduce me to the gentleman. Derek stammered, clearly uncomfortable. Mr. Stone, this is, well, Mr. Goldstein. He was just. I can speak for myself, David interrupted calmly, holding out his hand to Stone. David Goldstein. Nice to meet you. Stone shook his hand firmly, immediately noticing the controlled strength of the grip and the almost imperceptible scars on his fingers, marks of someone who had worked with his hands, but also something more. There was precision in those marks. Richard Stone. And you, Mr. Goldstein, what do you do for a living? The simple, direct question made Derek even more nervous. Mrs. Thompson whispered something to her husband about not listening to those people. I restore old things, David replied simply. Watches, jewelry, antiques in general. Sometimes I invest in real estate. Stone nodded, realizing that there was much more behind that modest answer. Interesting. What kind of real estate? Mostly commercial complexes. A few residential towers. Nothing too elaborate. What David wasn't saying was that a few towers meant 23 buildings spread across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. That nothing too elaborate represented an estate of more than $800 million. Jessica, unable to sit still, let out a giggle. Shopping complexes? That's cute. Must be one of those little sheds in Queens, huh? Stone turned to her with an expression that made the saleswoman's blood run cold. Miss Morgan, I suggest you learn the difference between confidence and ignorance before it's too late for your career. Mr. Stone, David said casually, can I ask you a question? Do you invest in social projects? It depends on the project. Why? Derek tried to interrupt, but Stone sent him for coffee with an authority that brooked no argument. Now we can talk properly, Stone said. Tell me about your social project. I'm building a rehabilitation center for young addicts, in memory of my daughter. She died at 16. A car accident caused by a drug-addicted kid, the son of a wealthy family who never faced any consequences. Stone nodded gravely. And the BMWs. 12 armored ambulances for rescue in dangerous areas. Young addicts are often in situations of extreme risk. David opened the leather briefcase and took out a document. It was no ordinary bank statement. It was a financial report from Goldman Sachs, headed Goldstein Family Trust Portfolio Summary. Stone took the document and his eyes progressively widened as he read. It wasn't millions. It was hundreds of millions. My God, he muttered. Mr. Goldstein. David, you're a man who lost his daughter and wants to do something meaningful with the money he's made. Derek returned with the coffee and saw Stone talking to David in a completely different tone. Stone walked away with Derek to a corner, speaking in a low but clearly angry tone. Derek grew paler and paler as the conversation progressed. Mr. Goldstein, Stone said when he returned, I'd like to discuss a partnership for your project. I appreciate the offer, but I'd prefer to finish my business here first. Stone smiled, understanding perfectly. Of course. Justice first, business later. Derek returned with a grave face, clearly having received information that changed his perspective. Mr. Goldstein, Derek said, his voice trembling, perhaps we could reconsider our approach. Interesting, David said, opening the folder again. But now I have a condition. David took out of the briefcase not only financial documents, but something that made Derek livid. It was a recording on his cell phone. He had been recording the entire conversation since he arrived. I want you to listen to something before we go any further. He pressed play, and Derek's voice echoed through the showroom. Are you going to pay with old coins? I know you, people like you, like to bargain, but this isn't a flea market. Jessica went as white as paper. Sarah stopped pretending she wasn't paying attention. 3 hours of recording, David said calmly. Every anti-Semitic joke, every prejudiced comment, every moment of humiliation. All recorded in high definition. Derek was breaking out in a cold sweat, finally realizing that he had been completely manipulated from the start. David wasn't a victim. He was a patient predator who had just revealed his prey. That's when everyone realized that the humiliation was about to change direction completely, not because David had lost his temper, but because he had maintained the exact cold-bloodedness to turn every insult he received into the rope that his own tormentors would use to hang themselves. 3 hours of footage, David repeated, letting the weight of the words settle in the suddenly chilly atmosphere of the showroom. Every anti-Semitic joke, every prejudiced comment, every moment of humiliation documented in high definition. Derek was visibly sweating now, his hands shaking as he tried to process the magnitude of the mistake he had made. Jessica had gone completely pale, realizing that her career was being destroyed in real time. Sarah completely stopped pretending to work, watching in horror as her world fell apart. Mr. Goldstein, Derek tried one last desperate shot. Maybe we can resolve this in a civilized. There's no need to. Civilized. David interrupted, his voice maintaining that terrible calm. How have you been civil to me for the last 3 hours? Stone watched everything with a mixture of fascination and horror, clearly impressed by David's meticulous strategy. Mrs. Thompson had moved away discreetly, trying to dissociate herself from the disaster she was witnessing. David opened the folder again and took out not only the financial documents, but a second recording, this one from Jessica's cell phone. Did you know that you posted photos and comments about me on social media? All recorded. Screenshots of every post, every comment, every meme like. Jessica choked. How did you? My team of lawyers has very efficient methods for collecting digital evidence, David replied simply. Especially when it comes to publicly documented discrimination. He held out the tablet to Stone, who read aloud, when someone confuses a BMW with a Jewish thrift store. Posted 2 hours ago, 127 likes, 43 shares. Interesting how quickly discrimination goes viral. Derek tried to approach the tablet, but Stone pushed him away with a brusque gesture. "You've done enough damage for today." "And there's more," David continued, pulling another document out of his briefcase. "Corporate Fleet Purchase Contract. 12 BMW X7S, customized specifications for armored ambulances. Total value, $1.8 million. Cash payment, immediate bank transfer." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek stared at the contract as if it were a death sentence. Jessica leaned on a Mercedes to keep from fainting. "But here's the interesting part," David smiled coldly. "This contract has a special clause. If there is any form of discrimination during the buying process, the sale is automatically cancelled and transferred to a competitor." Stone took the contract and read the clause aloud. "In the event of discriminatory treatment based on ethnicity, religion, physical appearance, or socioeconomic status, the buyer reserves the right to cancel this transaction and immediately direct it to Mercedes-Benz Beverly Hills, including all corresponding commissions." Derek almost fainted. $1.8 million in sales, plus the commissions that would support his family for years, had just slipped through his fingers. "Mr. Goldstein, please, can we reconsider?" But it's not over yet," David interrupted, pulling out his phone. "I have a call to make." He dialed and put it on speaker. A female voice answered, "Goldstein and Associates Law Firm, how can I help you?" "Sarah, it's me. I need you to immediately prosecute a case of religious and ethnic discrimination. We have complete recordings, digital evidence, and witnesses. I want civil and criminal action." "Understood, Mr. Goldstein. How many defendants?" David looked at Derek, Jessica, and Sarah. "3 main ones, plus the company." "And Sarah?" "I want that in the papers tomorrow. Luxury BMW dealership practices anti-Semitic discrimination against multimillionaire." Derek collapsed into a chair, realizing that it wasn't just his job that was at risk. His reputation, his career, his entire life was being destroyed in a matter of minutes. "Wait," Jessica tried desperately to intervene. "We didn't know who you were." "If we did." "If you knew, would you treat me differently?" David asked. "And that makes prejudice acceptable? Do they only respect rich people?" Stone shook his head, clearly impressed with the perfect trap David had set. "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." "Mr. Goldstein," Derek pleaded, tears starting to form in his eyes. "I have a family. I need this job. Please." "Did you think about your family when you decided to publicly humiliate me? Did you think about the consequences when you posted it on social media?" Sarah, who had been quiet until then, tried one last card. "We can delete the posts. We can apologize publicly." David smiled, not a cruel smile, but that of someone who was about to teach a lesson that would never be forgotten. "Too late. The screenshots are already with my lawyers. The investigation has already begun. And you know what?" He paused dramatically, looking at each of them. "I found out that I'm not the first person you've treated like this. My team has found other cases, other victims. A black doctor last month, a Hispanic family in January. You have a pattern of discriminatory behavior." Derek was completely destroyed now, realizing that David had built a solid, irrefutable case against them. "Justice," David said, calmly putting away his papers, "is not revenge. It's responsibility. You need to learn that actions have consequences." Stone approached David with genuine admiration. "Mr. Goldstein, it was a pleasure to witness that. And about our partnership. It will be a pleasure to discuss business with someone who understands the value of human dignity," David replied. While Derek, Jessica, and Sarah faced the reality that their careers had ended through sheer arrogance, David walked towards the exit, not as the humiliated man who had entered, but as someone who had just proved that true strength lies not in humiliating others, but in defending one's own dignity with ruthless intelligence. But the most devastating lesson was yet to come, a final revelation that would transform that victory into something even greater, proving that sometimes the most powerful justice is that which builds bridges while tearing down walls of prejudice. 6 months later, David was sitting in the panoramic office of his new Rebecca's Hope Rehabilitation Center, watching the 12 armored BMW X7S parked in the courtyard, now fully equipped as state-of-the-art rescue ambulances. Each vehicle had saved dozens of young addicts from New York's most dangerous streets. The New York Times headline was still framed on the wall, Multi-millionaire exposes discrimination at luxury dealership, case becomes symbol of fight against prejudice in elite retail. The court case had been devastating for Derek, Jessica, and Sarah. The 3-hour recording, coupled with digital evidence and testimonies from other victims, resulted in a conviction for discrimination that cost them not only their jobs, but their entire reputations. Derek now worked selling used cars in Queens, earning a tenth of what he used to. Jessica had been blacklisted from the automotive industry and was working as a telemarketer. Sarah discovered that anti-Semitic posts have long-lasting consequences on the job market. Mr. Goldstein, his assistant, announced over the intercom, "Mr. Stone has arrived for the meeting." Richard Stone entered with a genuine smile, carrying a report. His partnership with David had become one of the most successful collaborations of their careers. David, the figures for the third quarter are impressive. The center has rescued 847 young people, and the recovery rate is 40% above the national average. Rebecca would be proud, David smiled, gently touching the photo of his daughter on his desk. And there's more, Stone continued. 5 other entrepreneurs want to replicate the model in their cities. Your story has inspired a national movement. The irony was delicious. The humiliation Derek had tried to impose had become the catalyst for a revolution in the way rehabilitation centers operated across the country. The cruelty of a few people had inadvertently financed the salvation of thousands. The phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez, the center's medical director. "Mr. Goldstein, we've just received a 16-year-old girl, severely overdosed. We managed to get there in time thanks to the speed of the armored BMWs. She will survive." Another life saved by the same vehicles Derek had mocked, bought with the money Jessica had ridiculed, to honor a daughter Sarah had indirectly disrespected with her cruel comments. "You know what else is fascinating?" Stone observed. The dealership closed 3 months later. The bad press was so bad that the parent company canceled the franchise. The building is now a free community clinic. David smiled with genuine satisfaction. Justice has interesting ways of manifesting itself. The fall of the car dealership had been spectacular. After the video of the humiliations went viral with over 10 million views, massive boycotts and daily protests at the door caused sales to plummet by 90%. BMW canceled the franchise contract, claiming values incompatible with the brand. Just then, his assistant brought in a letter. "It arrived in the mail today, Mr. Goldstein." It was from Derek. David read it aloud to Stone. "Mr. Goldstein, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but you need to know that your story has changed my life. I'm attending therapy for implicit prejudice and doing volunteer work at community centers. I deeply regret having judged you. Derek Matthews." "Are you going to answer?" Stone asked. "I already have." David showed a ready envelope. "I've offered him a job here, in administration. Basic salary, but with the chance to learn about human dignity in practice." Stone was impressed. Even after everything? Rebecca always said that people can change when they face the consequences of their actions. Derek has lost everything: his job, his reputation, his financial stability. Now he can choose, remain bitter or change into someone better. The most powerful lesson had been revealed. True revenge lay not in destroying Derek, Jessica, and Sarah, but in turning their attempted humiliation into the foundation of something bigger and more meaningful than any of them could have imagined. 3 years later, Rebecca's Hope model had spread to 47 states. David had invested another $200 million in expansion, creating the largest network of rehabilitation centers in the country. Derek was now administrative coordinator at one of the centers, dedicating his second chance to helping young people that society had rejected. The BMW dealership where it all began had become a national symbol. The exact spot where David had been humiliated now had a sign: "Place where prejudice became purpose, Rebecca's Hope National Center." Mrs. Thompson, who had participated in the initial humiliation, ironically became one of the project's biggest donors after her own teenage son was saved by one of the armored BMW ambulances during an overdose. Jessica had tried to sue David for career destruction, but the case was dropped when her own digital evidence was used against her. She was now working in customer service, earning minimum wage, a cruel irony for someone who had mocked poor people's money. Life has a cruel and poetic sense of humor, David reflected, watching out the window as one of the ambulances left for another rescue. They tried to break me with prejudice, but they just gave me the materials to build something unbreakable. Stone raised his coffee cup in an impromptu toast. To Rebecca, who continues to save lives through her father's determination. To Rebecca, David repeated, who taught me that the best response to hate is no longer hate, but love transformed into action. David's story proved that when we face injustice with intelligence, patience, and purpose, we don't just survive, we thrive in ways that our oppressors could never destroy or understand. Derek had tried to humiliate David, but ended up providing the motivation for a transformation that would save thousands of lives. The real victory was not in Derek's fall, but in the rise of something much greater that emerged from the ashes of that humiliation. If this story of transformation and justice has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that sometimes, the darkest moments are just the beginning of the brightest chapters in our lives.